Welcome to the latest edition of the Cranky Curmudgeon's Corner. My name is Paul Thomas, and this evening we're going to talk about the midterm elections. Joining us tonight, we have Tyler Titus, Merrick Moses. The 2020 national election is being interpreted in a variety of ways. Biden beat Trump. The Democrats gained seats in what became a 50-50 Senate, which made Chuck Schumer majority leader by virtue of Vice President Harris weighing in on every tie. The Republicans gained seats in the House, which narrowed but did not overwhelm Nancy Pelosi's control of the gavel. Pundits of all stripes proclaimed the Democrats controlled all three levels of legislative and executive power. Early on in the pandemic was still raging, and the American Rescue Plan had a rather easy path to fruition because it represented more common sense than Trump's dysfunction. After that, the Senate filibuster, helped by narcissist Manchin and Sinema, made all the glorious efforts of voting rights, police reform, gun control, climate change, women's reproductive rights, LGBTQ protections, daycare, preschool funding, hearing and dental and eye care for seniors, reasonably priced prescription drugs, etc., all moot. These bills all passed the House, but died in the Senate, and all the pundits claimed that Biden and the Democrats were so crippled that a red wave was going to sweep as many as 60 Democratic House seats into Republican hands. Before we expose the next chapter of the first half of the Biden presidency, I'd like you to tell me if you believed in early 2022 that Republicans were sure to regain control of Congress. Moses, go back to January this year. What were you thinking about what was going to happen with this particular election that's coming up in a few weeks, as far as the House?
Well, at that time, from what I remember about that time, everybody was predicting that the GOP would win the House. The Senate was a little bit tighter at that time, but that was the projection. Only, and a lot of it was based on a historical analysis about how the party that's not in the White House seems to always get some seats in the midterms. However, with the advent of Roe v. Wade being overturned by scurrilous SCOTUS, the ball game has changed, and everything is in play now.
So you thought then in January that the Republicans were going to win based on your analysis of history and what the talking heads were telling you, but ever since Dobbs came out, you changed your mind.
Yeah, Dobbs, and to a lesser extent, some of the weirdo semi-fascist, total fascist things coming from Republicans, particularly around LGBTQ issues, in addition to their like craven lust for power and fielding candidates who beat their wives and kill puppies. Like, people don't really like that. So things are in play like uh now that they weren't before, if that makes sense.
Okay, Tyler, what did you think in January? And did you later on, as the summer progressed, change your thinking on what you thought then?
Yeah, so in January, like I'm just coming off of the loss of my own election, where we saw a dip, in 2020. We had flipped Erie County by a very small margin back to blue after 2016. And then in 2021, for the first time in several decades, a Democrat lost that seat. Now, there's a lot that goes into play here, but what we really saw just in Erie County was just some of these red, more not just like moderates, like very extreme candidates making it through, and it was painting a prediction of kind of what was to come in 2022, right? So Erie County, this bellwether county, being this test, like this like what is going to happen here, and we watched some of these spots that we thought for sure we're going to like seal, especially I mean, I know I was a little biased on my seat, but it was a bigger margin than what it has been for a long time. Again, there was a lot more going into play in that. But then when we fast forward, and I'm working with the Democratic Party, and I'm out canvassing throughout, I was not feeling very hopeful. If I'm being fully transparent, I was not feeling very hopeful. I was seeing a lot of apathy. People who were usually really charged up were not getting activated. They felt like just deflated, that they had put so much momentum into fighting some of these things, and just fascism, supremacy, and it was still getting away. But then we saw the Dobbs, we saw Roe versus Wade, and I will have to kind of go with what Moses said. And there was this swing, there was a momentum shift. Suddenly, these people had a reason to get re-angry, right? To get reactivated. I don't think that you win by large margins with fear, but it can be a solid activator for some people.
Okay, so you guys both have seen the same thing. Initially, you were kind of fearful, but now you feel a little bit more optimistic. The constant drone of the talking heads, and you guys alluded to that earlier, was that history tells us that the party of the current president always loses congressional seats in the midterms, but they never mentioned 2002, which was the midterm after an extraordinary event, that being 9/11. When W. Bush's Republicans gained seats, we had another extraordinary event in 2021, that being the January 6th insurrection. And I kept thinking that the voters all saw how cowardly Republicans behaved after Trump overtly tried to destroy our democracy. But the talking heads still kept claiming, and they still to this day, that the red sweep was inevitable. History is one thing, but don't you think that the media at times like to cherry pick certain events and ignore others when they make their prognostications? Tyler, do you think that it's sort of like a self-fulfilling prophecy whenever all you hear on TV was, oh, the Republicans are going to get the House, Republicans get the House, and no one's saying anything, to contradict that? What's your take on that?
Absolutely, right. So I think that we all know that media plays an enormous role, and what we are infiltrated with. We know this even like as candidates, that we know that we've got to get in front of you so many times that our name, even our messaging, has to hit you so many times before it's going to take note, and that maybe one or two of those talk points are going to stick. And so when we've got on constant CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, and it is replaying the same narrative over and over and over, it's going to stick. It's going to stick, and it's going to have an impact. However, when you are, I was on a call the other day with one of the nation's top pollsters who really focuses in on the Commonwealth. And she flat out said, like, the polls are everywhere and they're all over. And quite frankly, there's not a clear indication on who's going to win these seats. Like, people will tell you it's a guarantee here, it's a guarantee here, but that's not what the data is showing at all. The data, for the first time in a long time, is really conflicting, and it's very volatile right now. It's very volatile. But to go back to what you had said, absolutely, the media plays an enormous role, and whatever voter, whatever side you lie on, and you find your source, that's all you're getting access to. That's all you're hearing is those same talking points.
Yeah, regarding your point about the data being all over the board, I think a lot of it has to do with landlines and cell phones. People get calls to their landlines, and a lot of people don't have landlines anymore. They just have cell phones. If you're not getting these calls on your cell phones, then who knows? Okay, Merrick, what's your take on that? The media giving a self-fulfilling prophecy, is that something that you can buy?
I mean, yes and no. I can buy it in the sense of historically, that's usually how it works. The opposite party outside the White House usually gains some seats and takes the majority. But this climate is so volatile. I mean, every day there's a new wallop, I mean, it went from Herschel Walker having one kid to having 3 kids or 4 kids now. It could be 7 by the end. I mean, I don't know. So, and also too, people are getting very upset around the level of hypocrisy that they're seeing around the GOP. I also think that the specter of having Mr. Orange near the White House may lop up lop off some GOP votes and people may migrate to their blue candidate of choice. But I also think to quote something from Mitch McConnell, Jesus, Mary, Joseph. I hope I don't go to hell for saying this. Um, that candidate quality does matter, right?
Right.
So if we take it outside the midterms and just go to the state of Maryland for a minute, and we see Westmore versus Dan Cox. I mean, Westmore has an incredible lead, and that is in part due to Mr. Cox's abysmal personality and just milk toast, dry. Uh, uh, I don't know if I mean, he's just giving you nothing. He's giving you nothing. And so people kind of feel forced to, well, this is what I'm going to do. That being said, candidate quality does matter. Well, I mean, we're looking at Georgia. We're also looking at, what else are we looking at? Georgia. We're looking at Arizona with Carrie Lake. I mean, that that person is a disaster, just a whole disaster, and so the GOP is fielding a candidate of nightmares, not of dreams, of nightmares, if you will.
Well, I just read an article in the Atlantic talking about Carrie Lake that just said that she is what you're saying, a disaster as far as what she's saying, but she is so polished and so engaging, and the people have liked her in her 20 some years in the newscasting business, that she has a good shot of winning. And if you're looking at quality candidates, if Katie Hobbs isn't even willing to get on the debate stage with her, I mean, that just shows the quality of that candidate. So I think Mitch McConnell's right about that.
I do too. And I think that it's a mistake for Democrats to not engage with these folks head on. One of the things that I was disappointed about is Westmore would not debate Dan Cox at Morgan State University, which, disclaimer, that's my alma mater. That being said, I thought it was completely inappropriate. And the excuse is, well, we don't want to give them, we don't want to legitimize their views. Whether that's moot at that point, you have to debate your opponent, period. I mean, if Lincoln could debate Douglas, right? She can debate that lunatic Carrie Lake. She can do that. So right. I think that we need to stop all of that. And I think that the blue folks need to move head first into this battle. They really do. And stop trying to be nice.
Right. Being nice isn't working out so well. Hey, I have to cite you, Merrick, as the source of this next question, because it came up when you and I were started texting about this panel. Texas Governor Abbott started the procedure of putting immigrants from his state on buses and shipping them to places like New York, Chicago, D.C. to make some type of political gesture. DeSantis in Florida liked the idea so much that he sent an operative named Perla to Texas to convince migrants that there were jobs and support services waiting for them in Boston, which convinced a number of them to get on a plane whose ultimate destination was Martha's Vineyard. Please explain to our viewers your understanding of the mindset of the voter who thinks this is good policy. I mean, we're talking about some awful, awful thing here. And how does this work? Are we back to the cruelty thing? That if we can just
cruelty is the point. The rabid xenophobia, the rabid hatred of immigrants is driving this stupid theory of white replacement theory, or what they say, the great replacement. I'll say the white replacement theory is driving a lot of these people. The misinformation from Fox News. And I'm going to give a shout out to all my evangelical cousins out there who think about the beast. If The letter F is the sixth letter. The letter O is the 15th letter. 1 and 5 is 6. The letter X is the 24th letter. 2 and 4 is 6. So that's 666. So they just definitely, they're basically listening to the beast. But I digress.
You do.
But that being said, they have decided to make themselves vulnerable to propaganda and things that just make no sense. But I do in part blame the American educational system because clearly it has not equipped numerous people of any type of critical thinking skills or logical frameworks to make an informed decision. That being said, cruelty is the point. This is the irony, though. The people that DeSantis flew up to Massachusetts, right?
Right.
They're safer than actual Floridians who when he wasted that money to send them up there. Nobody knows, honestly, how much money was spent on that. We do know a couple of things. One, that the company that ran the flights are friends of DeSantis and Gates, right? We know that. Two, this person named Perla, nobody knows who she is. I've heard, listening to the pundits, that she could be charged with accessory to human trafficking. It's basically human trafficking, right? And so, but who was made to look stupid? Abbott and DeSantis, because when those people showed up in Martha's Vineyard to treat those people like the human beings they are, I mean, dare I say, true Christian hospitality, it made them look real stupid. It made them look mean. You notice that DeSantis is real quiet about that because when people started talking about lawsuit, remember they filed a lawsuit, then the Texas sheriff is opening up an investigation. That's when he went radio silent. And what I want to say to the maggot crowd is that y'all need to start thinking that some of this stuff is not right. And lastly, but not least, I think it is highly offensive for DeSantis to go on this weird thing since his great grandparents were immigrants from Italy who 100 plus years ago weren't even thought of as white. So he is disgracing his own lineage by being a bigot. He has no right to be a bigot because his people, his ancestors, were denigrated and discriminated against. It's disgusting. It's disgusting.
Okay, well, we heard from Merrick. Tyler, what's your take on the mindset that thinks this is all wonderful and good?
And I say this with knowing that there's got to be a lot to unpack. This is genuinely the American way, though. I mean, if we truly trace our roots, which are colonialism and hegemonic, patriarchy, meaning that there's one way, it's the white way, and there's one way to be masculine, and anybody else, and then we've created a hierarchy within that masculinity. This is all set the stage for these actions to happen, right? It is two cisgender, heterosexual white men who have made this decision on and categorized human beings as somehow less than, like they've tiered down these systems and have decided they're the ailments of our problems. When systems fail us, we look for someone and people to hold accountable. The hard part for us as Americans, because we have been fed so many falsehoods about our history, is for us to understand that the system is actually working as the system was always designed to work. And we are simply carrying out the same things that we have always done. We've always done this. And that is the mindset. But this isn't something that happened overnight. This isn't something that, that is just like shocking and out of the blue. This is not something that Trump released. This is something that Trump engaged with. This is something that he fed, fuel to the fire on. He just made it bigger and more vocal. But you don't need to look any further than redlining. When, what we did to indigenous people, this is our nation's history. We just now have planes that we can carry out some of the missions with. That's so for me, it's hard not to go super cynical and just be like, what pisses me off, and I'm just going to say what pisses me off is that people are just now seeing that this is happening, right? That we're just now catching on, that hey, that's really wrong. We shouldn't do that, because we have been doing this. This is how this nation founded: is we took people and we made them do things for us. And we took people out of their homes because we wanted their homes, or we wanted that space, or we needed someone to blame. And this is where we as a country have got to make a decision that we're going to live up to our potential. Like, we're going to follow through and deliver on the things that we founded this nation on. And that's going to be, genuine justice and liberty for all, right? Like, it's got to be for all, including those that we don't think that got here legally, because there's no such thing as an illegal human. There's no such thing as an illegal human. And boundaries and borders are made up. They're man-made. We didn't, wake up one day the universe was like other than the oceans and the way that the continents have divided. There's no such thing as a border. We've created that. And that is the mindset. So it's so much bigger than the actions of these two people who are carrying out the things that we as Americans have always done, but maybe not so openly, or that we've done behind erased history books. And so I think that this is us owning up, like, holy shit, we set the stage for this to happen. We have set this stage. So now what do we do about it? What do we do to stop it? What do we say, as a, a democratic, not Democrats, but as a democratic force, that we are done, that we're done, that we're gonna hold people accountable, and we're gonna start believing them when they tell us who they are.
And how we do it is get out to vote.
Absolutely.
Trump made a big splash in the Republican primaries by endorsing only candidates who would publicly state that the 2020 presidential election was rigged and that Trump actually won. This strategy played well in the primaries because many of the election deniers are Republican nominees all across America. I think the last count was like 350 if you're counting the state houses and everything. Most are batshit crazy. How well do you think these Trumpsters are going to fare in November? We already talked a little bit about Carrie Lake, and I think she has a good chance of winning the governorship of Arizona, not because she's an election denier as much as she's just a smooth politician, very skilled in that. So, Tyler, what do you think about that? These Trumpers, you think they're going to win most of them? Not most of them, some of them, very few of them. What do you think?
No, I think that they're going to win a lot of seats, and I'm very sad to say that, but that is what I predict. I think in some of these states, there's still a lot of gerrymandering that has happened. There's still a lot of voter suppression that's occurring. There's still a lot, like we've made it impossible for some people's voices to be heard in certain districts, and so I do think that we are going to get another round of really shitty politicians in high up positions come this November. I don't think that they're going to pull as many seats as they were banking on pulling, and I think that this is going to be a loud message that is going to be sent to the Republican Party. So I predict seeing a huge shift in 2023 and then in 2024 when they're ramping up for the presidency, because the 2022 is a solid gauge on who are we going to rally behind in 2024. And so I think that they will win many seats. I don't think that they will win all the seats that they are predicting, and I'm genuinely hoping in our Commonwealth that we are able to really hold this blue line and show up in big ways for the governor, the lieutenant governor, and the congressional seats. But I'm worried. I am worried in some of those races.
Okay, Merrick, you're pretty confident about what's going on in Maryland with your governor's race. But overall, how do you think these Trumpers are going to make out, these election deniers?
Some will win big and some will flop. The races that I'm really keen on, besides Georgia, is I'm looking at Pennsylvania. Our cousins in Pennsylvania. Mastriano is a disaster. What's his name? That's not Mastriano. Oz is a disaster. He's a charlatan. One of the things that is hurting Fetterman is the health issue with his stroke. And Oz as a physician, right? Who was actually a physician before, but he became a whack job psycho doctor. Um, seems credible. You know, this is the thread. I want y'all to see something. The thread between a lot of these candidates. Some of them are celebrities. Carrie Lake is a celebrity. She was on TV for a while. Herschel Walker scored touchdowns. That makes a lot of people in Georgia happy. Happy, even though it happened 30 years ago, you know, and he sounds like a blooming idiot. They still love that, right? Oz again on TV. And so one of the things that this is now is Celebrity Apprentice Politics Edition, which is unfair to the American people. But because Americans love celebrities so much, I mean, there is no royalty here but celebrity, right? They end up falling for the okie doke. And at the end of the day, I mean, it's horrendous. So I'm predicting pretty tight races. I think one of the races that I'm looking forward to in terms of the midterms, not just the House and the Senate, I'm looking at Michigan with Gretchen Whitmer and the lady Tudor, whose name last name I can't remember, and her just misogynistic reasoning around banning termination of pregnancies. But we do have, when I say we, I mean blue people do have a lot to be concerned about. One of the things is that they have not what I say, we don't have necessarily a stellar cast of candidates in that we don't have the celebrity. We actually have people who want to do the work, right? We actually have people who want to do the work, but unfortunately, the American people love celebrity.
The January 6th Congressional Select Committee is back in session. They had what many are saying was their last thing today. A lot can be said about what these efforts have produced for the American people who have taken the time to witness the hearings. Today, they announced that they've subpoenaed Trump to come in and testify. Will these hearings have any effect on the outcome of the midterm election? And if so, how much? What do you think, Merrick? You think they're going to affect any of the voters this midterm?
I think some people will be affected. I think that one of the most shocking moments that really people were looking at like, whoa, was when what is her name? Cassidy Hutchinson.
Yeah.
She said that Trump tried to bank in Baltimore. We call getting beat up or getting jumped being banked. So he tried to bank the Secret Service. Like, who does that? I mean, you know, that really shows someone who's completely unhinged and detached from reality. And I'm sure there were some Republicans that were sitting on the fence and were really like, oh my goodness, this is not a good thing. You know, and so I think that that some people, you know, it really did kind of piss them off. And I think that them summoning Trump, giving him a subpoena, we know that he's gonna fight that to the end of time. I don't know how it's gonna turn out. But at the end of the day, one thing I do hope is that he will get indicted, but he will not get indicted before the midterms. He won't get indicted. Yeah, Merrick Garland, this guy plays chess. I mean, I know he looks like the boring professor from chemistry, but he knows what he's doing. So he won't get locked up before the midterms, but he might get locked up by Christmas time. That would be a great present to the American people, would be Trump being locked up at Christmas. That would be so great for the country. I'd love it, actually.
So you don't think that they're going to really? I think a lot of people's minds are made up.
I think there's still some people on the fence, though. There's still some people on the fence, and I genuinely think outside of evangelical Christian circles that people generally don't like liars, but we have to. Our problem might be the people who are like, well, I don't agree with his morals, but I agree with the policy. Usually there are no policies when they say that. However, they will, you know, make that argument.
Yeah. Hey, Tyler, you think these hearings are going to have an effect? on how people vote in these midterms?
I think it's going to have a few effects. I think one, there will be some independents who will push to blue, to vote blue. And I also think that it's going to rally, though, some of those staunch believers around Trump, right? Like, you're coming at him again, right? So you're going to have that effect that's going to be almost like a rally cry. We saw what he's capable of on January 6th, right? So there's going to be a rally cry very similar in response to this. Now, does that translate over to the polls? I think so in some states, and in some races, absolutely. I think that will translate over to more people showing up. But overall, I think that people who were going to be swayed by this were already swayed. They've already heard it. They've already with the first round, and then people who were not going to be swayed. This is just more like you're coming at our person. Like, this is, that they're feeling more righteous or more staunch in their stance and supporting him. And so I guess I don't mean to sound like pessimistic on it, but I think that those who are gonna be moved, the majority were already moving. Like you had said, that they've already kind of made up their mind, they've committed. But I do think that anytime national news drops, especially this close to election, it has a pull. It has a pull.
My belief is everybody's mind's already made up. My mind was made up in 2016 when that son of a bitch came down to Escalade.